will now turn to Senator Bennet to introduce him as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to just thank you on behalf of the people of Colorado for holding this incredibly important hearing. We have been afflicted by both drought and fire, so thank you for doing it, and I'm very pleased to introduce Dr. Roger Pulwarty to the committee this morning. Dr. Pulwarty comes to us by way of Boulder, Colorado, where he works at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. There he heads NOAA's National Integrated Drought Information System. He also serves as the chief of the Climate and Societal Interactions Division of NOAA's Climate Division. His past research and publications have focused on extreme weather events and disaster risk reduction in the western United States, Latin America, and the Caribbean. Dr. Pulwarty has testified before Congress before. His past appearances have focused on climate change, water resources, and climate adaptation issues. He received his bachelor's degree from York University in Toronto, and he received his PhD in climatology from the University of Colorado at Boulder. Madam Chair, thank you very much for allowing Dr. Pulwarty to testify today.
Thank you very much. And Senator Bennet.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and again, thanks for holding the hearing. I actually just want to pick up where Senator Roberts left off and say thank you for the emergency grazing. We have a rancher named Al Heaton who runs most of his cattle in Colorado's Dolores County, which is near the Utah border, and he was the first person, Madam Chair, to say to me that if he knew in advance that he could have an extended period of time on CRP land, that it would allow him to manage his summer grazing differently than he was and stress that less. And we were able to take his voice to Washington, and the Secretary responded to that, and it sounds like we're going to have another year where we're going to need more of that. I wonder, Dr. Glober, if you would like to talk briefly about the value of the USDA conservation programs for keeping our soils healthy and occasionally giving producers this type of relief.
No, there's no question. I think particularly in a lot of areas, obviously the conservation programs.
I'm all that's left, so you can talk about how important it is to Colorado.
but in particularly in those areas where we're seeing very dry conditions right now. Things like the Emergency Watershed Protection Program, which I think is very, very important. If you look at the wildfires that affected Colorado, there, as you know, we're limited in funding. We hope that we can work and get funding restored to some of these programs. But I think they're, again, very important to mitigate and to help communities respond to these disasters.
Actually, you raised, I'm going to come to Dr. Pulwarty next, but you raised an important point. We had the EWP funds in the Sandy bill that was passed by the Senate, appropriately so, I think, because we are still trying to deal with the effects of these disasters in our state, these wildfires that you talked about brought on by drought and other circumstance. And you know, as the former ranking member was saying earlier, this is the only committee that actually did bipartisan deficit reduction in the last Congress. And it had the sense, however, to think about things like fire mitigation as something that would save us money going forward, rather than you know, making these cuts in the name of deficit reduction, knowing that we're going to have to deal with these disasters on the back end and the effect on our watershed on the back end. I wonder if you have thoughts about that. You're an economist about.
Well, no, these are clearly very. This has been a very successful program when the funding's there, and to help communities and to organize on this and to you know, do the sort of mitigation efforts and rehabilitation efforts that are necessary. It's been very, very important, and hopefully we will find a funding source for these.
There's another case, I think, where the Congress's inability to act in real time is absolutely penny wise and pound foolish. I mean, when the spring snowbelts start in Colorado, which they inevitably will, even though we don't have the snowpack that we wish that we had. You know, when we watch these hillsides wash into our streams, the effect on our water systems, the effect on our producers could be very significant. And it's, I think, another case where people are playing games here instead of focusing on what's going on at home. Dr. Pulwarty, I've never said this to a witness in any hearing that I have ever attended in Congress, but I hope you're wrong, because
I do too, sir.
we have now had 2 years in a row, and it sounds like we're going to have a third year of drought in our region. And I wonder if you could talk about the specific challenges that NOAA projects for producers in the water-scarce western region of our country.
Thank you very much, Senator. I hope I'm wrong as well. The state of Colorado, as you know, in the Front Range where I live, and others do, we get 40% of our water, 30 to 40% from the Colorado Basin itself. The Colorado Basin came in at 44% in the previous water year. So far, the fall snowpack has not been as significant as we would like it. In some places it's 40, some places 60%, and we hope that picks up in March and April. However, right now, based on what's happening in the Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic Oceans, we're not projecting an improved set of conditions in those basins. The upper basin, including the San Juan and places like that. I actually know the Dolores Valley pretty well. I know where Mr. Heaton's spread. The area, in terms of the basin, is experiencing some lower precipitation in snowpack, and it's also experiencing a combination of high temperatures, however driven. Something else that is happening in that basin has to do with some of our rural communities where there's rain-fed agriculture. And so the combination of temperature and drought is actually creating the die-off of key vegetation that holds our soils together. And the result then is dust storms, dust on snow, which lets the runoff and melt occur even earlier than we're accustomed to managing it. From that standpoint, and looking into the future, while we're seeing some improvement in the lower Colorado Basin, Arizona, Southern California, Nevada, we're expecting that to be short-lived into April. From the standpoint of the upper basin, and again, I hope I am in fact wrong, we're not projecting significant new inputs of snow unless we get heavy rainfall events later in the spring. One of the reasons why that's the case is when it's been dry for a year before, even when you get significant snowpack, a lot of that disappears because the soil just picks it up. In 2005, we had 100% of snowpack, but the runoff was 70% of what we expected because the springtime had been warm. The Colorado is now in its second longest 10-year period of low flows on record. If we average over the last 10 years, the flow has been at average or less. And this is in an already over-allocated system, as you know better than I do. I've only lived in Colorado for 26 years, so I'm a newbie. The issue concerning the basin where 30 million people live and where we have 7 states reliant on the water is very much at the edge. The demand exceeded supply about 10 years ago, so it doesn't take a major drought to put us into areas of contention. What's been excellent, however, has been that our partners, the Bureau of Reclamation and others, have stepped back and said, let's work with the states on how to effectively manage this situation. What new information can we provide? So NOAA is working with the River Forecast Center in Salt Lake City, is working with Reclamation and others to make certain that we're clearer on what that inflow might look like. And to be perfectly honest, given the uncertainty, certainly there are issues in introducing drought-resistant crops, there are issues in introducing risk pooling and insurance. But where the conservation reserve programs come in is the admission that we're uncertain about the future, that it leaves us the flexibility to manage for the pieces that we're uncertain about. And I think that's the richest contribution from the standpoint of an understanding of what the weather and climate is doing, naturally or otherwise, and then what the buffers in our system supply.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much.